The grand hall of Buckingham Palace was quieter than usual that afternoon. Outside, tourists pressed their faces against the iron gates, hoping for a glimpse of royalty. Inside, something was unraveling. Prince Louis stood frozen near the tall windows of the East Gallery. His small hands trembled at his sides. Tears streamed down his cheeks, but he made no sound. He had learned early that crying loudly in the palace often brought more attention than comfort. A guard stationed near the corridor noticed him first. Sergeant Thomas Reed had served the royal family for 12 years. He had seen tantrums, laughter, and even arguments. But this was different. The boy looked shattered. Reed glanced around. No nannies, no parents. Just a 6-year-old prince standing alone in a room built for kings. He approached carefully. "Your Royal Highness, are you all right?" Louis didn't answer. His blue eyes stared past the guard, toward the double doors at the far end of the hall. Behind those doors, voices were rising. Reed recognized them immediately. The Princess of Wales and the Queen Consort. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story and want more emotional royal tales like this, hit that subscribe button. You won't regret it. The guard knelt beside Louis. "What happened, young man?" Louis finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Mummy said something." Aunt Camilla got angry. Reed felt his stomach tighten. He had been trained never to interfere in family matters. But the look on this child's face told him something had crossed a line. The doors suddenly opened. Kate Middleton stepped out first. Her face was pale, her jaw tight. She moved with the grace she always carried in public. But her hands shook slightly as she smoothed her dress. Behind her, Camilla appeared. Her expression was stone, cold, controlled. Kate's eyes found Louis instantly. Her entire body softened. She rushed toward him, dropping to her knees and pulling him into her arms. "Darling, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry you heard that." Louis buried his face in her shoulder. Small body shook with silent sobs. Camilla stood in the doorway watching. She said nothing. After a moment, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Reed remained still, his eyes fixed on the opposite wall. He had heard enough. More than enough. Kate lifted Louis into her arms and carried him toward the private quarters. As she passed the guard, she paused. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Thank you, Sergeant Reed, for being here," he nodded. "Of course, Your Royal Highness." She hesitated, then added, "What happened today? It stays between these walls." "Understood, ma'am." But Reed knew better. In a palace filled with eyes and ears, nothing ever truly stayed secret. Later that evening, Reed sat alone in the guard room. His shift had ended, but he couldn't leave. He kept replaying the scene in his mind. The boy's tears, Kate's trembling hands, Camilla's icy silence. He had served long enough to know when something significant had occurred. This wasn't a simple disagreement. This was a fracture, and fractures, in families like this, rarely healed quietly. The question that haunted him was simple. What had Kate said to make Camilla react that way? And why had it hurt a child so deeply? The palace felt heavier the next morning. Staff moved through the corridors with unusual caution, as though the walls themselves were listening. Sergeant Reed arrived early for his shift. He had barely slept. The image of Prince Louis in tears had stayed with him through the night. As he took his post near the East Gallery, he noticed something unusual. The area had been cleared. No scheduled tours. No staff meetings. Just silence. Then he saw her. Kate Middleton walked down the corridor alone. No security detail. No assistants. Just her, moving with quiet determination. She stopped when she saw him. "Sergeant Reed." "Your Royal Highness?" He stood straighter. She studied him for a moment, then stepped closer. Her voice was low. "You were there yesterday. You saw Louis?" "I did, ma'am. He didn't sleep well last night. He kept asking me why people say cruel things when they're angry." Reed's chest tightened. "I'm sorry to hear that." Kate looked toward the windows. Morning light streamed through, casting long shadows across the floor. "Do you have children, Sergeant?" "Two, ma'am. A boy and a girl." "Then you understand. You'd do anything to protect them." Without question, she turned back to him. Her eyes were tired but fierce. "What happened yesterday wasn't supposed to happen. Louis was supposed to be with his nanny. But she was delayed, and he wandered into the corridor at exactly the wrong moment. Reed remained silent. He knew she was telling him this for a reason. Camilla and I were discussing arrangements for an upcoming event. We disagreed on something important, something involving the children. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I said that my children's well-being comes before protocol, before tradition, before anyone's expectations. Reed nodded slowly. That seems reasonable, ma'am. Camilla disagreed. She said that royal children are raised to serve the crown first, that personal feelings are secondary. The weight of those words hung in the air. Kate continued. I told her that times have changed, that William and I won't raise our children the way things were done in the past. We won't sacrifice their happiness for appearances. Reed began to understand. This wasn't just a disagreement about an event. This was about philosophy, about the future of the monarchy itself. She didn't take that well, he asked quietly. Kate's expression hardened. She told me I was naive, that I was raising my children to be weak. She said Louis, in particular, needed to learn discipline and duty, not coddling. Reed felt anger flare in his chest. Louis is 6 years old. Exactly what I said. That's when things escalated. She wrapped her arms around herself, as though suddenly cold. I told her she had no right to dictate how we raise our children, that she wasn't their grandmother by blood, and her opinion on their upbringing was not required. The words landed like stones in water. Reed now understood why Camilla had looked so furious, and why Louis had been so upset. Louis heard that part, Kate said softly. He heard me say she wasn't his real grandmother. He didn't understand the context. He just heard anger and rejection. Children always hear the worst parts, Reed said gently. Tried to explain it to him, but he's confused. He loves Camilla. She's always been kind to him, but he also sensed the tension. He knew something was broken. Kate looked at Reed directly. I need you to understand something. I don't regret what I said. I meant every word. But I hate that Louis was hurt by it. You were protecting your children, ma'am. Any parent would have done the same, would they? Or would they have stayed silent to keep the peace? Reed thought about his own children. About the times he had bitten his tongue for the sake of family harmony, but there were lines. And when someone threatened his kids, even verbally, those lines became walls. You did the right thing, he said firmly. Asterisk by midday. The palace staff were whispering. News traveled fast in these old halls, even when people tried to keep secrets. Red overheard 2 housekeepers talking near the service entrance. Heard the princess and the queen consort had a row yesterday. About what? The children? Always about the children? Reed moved past them quickly. He didn't want to be part of the rumor mill, but he couldn't ignore what was happening either. That afternoon, Prince William arrived at the palace. He looked tense. His jaw was set, his movements sharp. Reed watched as William disappeared into the private wing. 20 minutes later, emerged with Kate. They walked together toward the queen consort's chambers. This wasn't going to be a casual conversation. Reed remained at his post, but his instincts told him to stay alert. When royals confronted each other, things could escalate quickly. 40 minutes passed, and the door opened. William came out first. His face was flushed. Kate followed, her expression unreadable. Neither looked pleased. Behind them, Camilla stood in the doorway. Her face was composed, but her eyes were sharp. This conversation isn't over, William. He stopped, turned.
Us.
Yes, it is. You don't get to tell us how to raise our children. That ends now. I'm trying to prepare them for the reality of their roles. They're children. They deserve to be children. And they deserve to be ready for what's coming. You of all people should understand that. William's hands clenched into fists. Kate placed a gentle hand on his arm. We're done here, Kate said quietly. This discussion is finished. Camilla's gaze shifted to her. You may think you're protecting them, Catherine, but you're setting them up for failure. Kate's voice remained steady. I'd rather they fail with kindness than succeed with cruelty. The words hung in the air like a final verdict. Camilla stepped back into her chambers and closed the door. William exhaled slowly. Let's go check on Louis. They walked past Reed without acknowledging him. But as Kate passed, she glanced his way. A silent thank you. For witnessing. For understanding. Reed returned to his duties. But his mind was restless. He thought about the different worlds colliding within these walls. The old guard, who believed in duty above all, and the new generation, who believed in balance. In humanity, both sides thought they were right. Both sides believed they were protecting the future of the monarchy, but only one side was thinking about the children that evening. Reed finished his shift and headed toward the exit. As he walked through the corridor, he saw a small figure sitting on a bench near the garden doors. Prince Louis. The boy was alone again, staring out at the rose garden. His face was calmer now, but the sadness remained. Reed approached carefully. "Your Royal Highness? Shouldn't you be with your family?" Louis looked up. "Mummy and Papa are talking. They said I should wait here." Reed hesitated, then sat down beside him. "Not too close. Just close enough. Are you feeling better today?" Louis nodded. "A little." Mummy explained things. She said grown-ups sometimes argue, but it doesn't mean they don't love each other. That's true. But Aunt Camilla hasn't talked to me since yesterday. She always says good morning. But not today. Reed's heart ached for the boy. Sometimes adults need time to think. It doesn't mean she's angry with you. She's angry with Mummy. Maybe, but that's not your responsibility to fix. Louis looked at him with those impossibly wise eyes. Papa says being royal means always fixing things, even when they're not your fault. Reed felt the weight of that statement. This child, barely out of kindergarten, already carried the burden of his future. Your papa is right about many things, Reed said carefully. But you're still young. Let the adults handle the adult problems. Louis nodded, but he didn't look convinced. 3 days passed. The tension in the palace didn't ease. If anything, it thickened. Camilla and Kate avoided each other. Staff noticed. The family noticed. And the press, always circling like sharks, began to sense something was wrong. Reed saw the effects everywhere. Meetings were rescheduled to avoid overlaps. Events were carefully coordinated so the two women wouldn't have to appear together unnecessarily. It was exhausting, and it was taking a toll on everyone, especially the children. Prince Louis had grown quieter. He smiled less. During a garden visit with his siblings, Reed watched as the boy sat apart from the others, picking at the grass. Princess Charlotte noticed. She walked over and sat beside her younger brother. "You're sad." Louis shrugged. "I'm okay." "No, you're not. I can tell." George joined them, more cautious. "Is this about Mummy and Aunt Camilla?" Louis didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. Charlotte put her arm around him. "It'll be okay. Grown-ups fight sometimes. They'll figure it out. But what if they don't?" Louis asked quietly. George frowned. "Then we'll just have to stay out of it." "That's what Papa always says. Royal business is complicated. But it's about us. How can we stay out of it if it's about us?" Charlotte and George exchanged looks. They didn't have an answer. Reed turned away, giving them privacy. But the conversation stayed with him. These children were being forced to navigate adult conflicts. To carry burdens they shouldn't have to carry. Later that afternoon, Reed was summoned to the security office. His supervisor, Commander Hastings, sat behind the desk with a grave expression. "Reed, sit down," he obeyed. Hastings folded his hands. "I've received inquiries about what happened last week between the princess and the queen consort." Reed's stomach dropped. "Inquiries from whom?" "Palace Communications. They want to ensure nothing. Leaks. Haven't said anything to anyone." "I believe you. But others are talking. Staff members. People who claim to have heard raised voices." Reed remained silent. Hastings leaned forward. "I need to know what you saw." Officially, Reed considered his options. He could downplay it. Say it was a minor disagreement. Keep the peace. But then he thought of Louis, of the tears, of the way Kate had trembled as she held her son. "It was serious," Reed said finally. "The princess and the queen consort had a significant disagreement about the children. Prince Louis overheard." He was distressed. Hastings nodded slowly. "And your assessment? As someone who was there?" The princess was defending her children. The queen consort was firm in her views. It escalated quickly. Who was in the wrong? Reed met his supervisor's eyes. With respect, sir, I don't think that's for me to judge. But if you're asking who I'd side with as a father, I'd side with the parent protecting their child. Hastings exhaled. That's what I thought you'd say. He closed the folder in front of him. This conversation stays between us. No reports will be filed. Officially, nothing happened. Understood. Did. Be careful. You're in a difficult position. You've seen something you weren't supposed to see. That makes you valuable. And sometimes, valuable people become targets. The warning was clear. Reed left the office feeling uneasy. He had done nothing wrong. But in a place like this, innocence didn't always matter that evening. As Reed walked to his car, he noticed a figure standing near the staff entrance. Kate, she was waiting for him. He approached cautiously. Your Royal Highness. I wanted to thank you, she said, for your discretion and for your kindness to Louis. It's my duty, ma'am. It's more than that. You treated him like a person, not just a title. That matters more than you know, Reed nodded. How is he? Better. Slowly. He's resilient. All my children are. She paused. I also wanted to apologize. You were put in an impossible position. You shouldn't have had to witness any of that. Family conflicts happen everywhere, ma'am. Even in palaces, true. But ours come with consequences. She looked back at the palace. Camilla and I haven't spoken since that day. William tried to mediate, but it didn't help. She believes I disrespected her. I believe she overstepped. And the children? They sense it. Louis especially. He keeps asking when Aunt Camilla will play with him again. Reed felt a pang of sympathy. Children just want peace. And we're failing to give them that. Asterisk, a week later, King Charles called a family meeting. It was rare for him to intervene directly in disputes, but the situation had become untenable. The meeting was held in the blue drawing room. William and Kate arrived first. Camilla came separately, her expression neutral, but guarded. Reed wasn't present. But he heard about it later from another guard who had been stationed outside the door. The king had been direct. This ends now. I don't care about pride or principle. I care about family. And right now, we're fracturing. William had spoken first. Father, this isn't about pride. It's about boundaries. Camilla has repeatedly overstepped when it comes to our children. Camilla had responded coolly. I was offering guidance. Guidance born from decades of experience in this family. Kate had interjected. Guidance is welcome. Judgment is not. You questioned our parenting. You suggested our children were being raised poorly. That's not guidance. That's criticism. The room had gone silent. Charles had looked at his wife. Is that true? Camilla had hesitated. I expressed concern. Perhaps my words were sharper than intended. But my intentions were good. Intentions don't matter when they hurt people, Kate had said quietly. Louis cried for an hour after that conversation. He thought you hated him. That's the impact of your words. Camilla's face had paled. I never intended, but that's what happened.
Else.
Charles had intervened. Camilla, you need to apologize. To Catherine. And to Louis. I will. Of course, William had leaned forward. And we need your word. That you'll respect our boundaries. That you won't question how we raise our children unless we ask for your input. Camilla had looked at her husband, then back at William. You have my word. The meeting had ended there, but the damage had been done. Trust, once broken, was difficult to rebuild. 2 days later, Camilla visited the Cambridge children. She brought gifts, toys, books, an olive branch wrapped in expensive paper. Louis had been cautious at first. He had watched her carefully. Uncertain, Camilla had knelt down to his level. Louis, I owe you an apology. I was unkind to your mummy, and you heard things that upset you. That was wrong of me. Louis had looked at his mother. Kate had nodded gently. I forgive you, Louis, had said softly. But you have to promise not to be mean to Mummy again. Camilla had smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. I promise. Louis had hugged her then, and something in the room had shifted. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't healed. But it was a start. Reed heard about the reconciliation from Kate herself. She had stopped by his post the following day. "I thought you'd want to know." Louis is smiling again. Reed had felt relief wash over him. "I'm glad, ma'am. Camilla and I will never be close. But we've agreed to be civil. For the children, for the family, that's all anyone can ask." Kate had nodded. "Thank you, Sergeant Reed, for being there when it mattered." "Always, Your Royal Highness." As she walked away, Reed felt something he hadn't felt in days. Hope, not for the monarchy, not for the institution, but for the people inside it, the ones trying to navigate impossible expectations while still holding on to their humanity. Because at the end of the day, that's what mattered most. Not titles, not protocol, not tradition. Just people trying to protect the ones they loved. Months passed. The palace returned to its usual rhythm. Tours resumed. Events were held. The machinery of royalty churned on. But things were different. Subtly, but noticeably. Kate and Camilla maintained a careful distance. They were polite in public, professional in private, but the warmth that had once existed between them was gone. Reed noticed it during state dinners and public appearances. The way they stood just a bit farther apart. The way their conversations were brief and functional. Louis, however, had recovered. "Children are resilient in ways adults forget." He laughed again. Played again. The tears had dried. One afternoon, Reed saw the young prince in the garden with his siblings. They were playing a game, something involving knights and dragons. Louis was the knight. He held a stick, like a sword, and chased George around the fountain. Kate watched from a bench, a small smile on her face. Reed approached. "He seems happy, ma'am." She looked up. "He is. Finally. Though he still asks questions sometimes. About why Aunt Camilla doesn't visit as often." "What do you tell him?" "The truth. That adults sometimes need space. But that it doesn't mean we don't care about each other." Reed nodded. "That's wise." Kate watched her son. "I think about that day often. About what could have happened if you hadn't been there. If Louis had been alone even longer. He wasn't. And that's what matters. Still, I'm grateful for your presence. For your discretion." Reed hesitated, then spoke carefully. "May I ask, ma'am? Do you regret what you said?" "To the Queen Consort." Kate considered the question. "I regret that Louis was hurt. I regret the timing. But the words themselves? No, they needed to be said. Boundaries needed to be drawn. And has she respected them? Yes, she has. She keeps her distance, offers opinions only when asked. It's better this way. Clearer." Reed thought about his own family, about the arguments and reconciliations, about the delicate balance between honesty and harmony. "Family is complicated," he said, "especially ours." Kate stood. "But we make it work, because we have to." For them, she nodded toward her children, still playing, still innocent of the weight they would someday carry. "That's all any parent can do," Reed said. Kate smiled. "Exactly." She walked toward the children, and Reed returned to his post. As he stood in the corridor watching the afternoon light fade, he thought about everything he had witnessed. The tears, the confrontation, the reconciliation, the fragile peace that followed. He had spent 12 years guarding the royal family. He had seen celebrations and tragedies, joy and sorrow. But this moment had taught him something new. That even in a palace built on tradition and protocol, the most important battles were the quiet ones. The ones fought not for power or prestige, but for love. For protection. For the simple right to raise your children as you saw fit. Kate had fought that battle, and she had won. Not perfectly, not without cost, but she had won. And Louis had smiled again. That was the only victory that truly mattered. As Reed finished his shift and walked toward the exit, he passed the East Gallery, the same spot where it had all begun. He paused, looking at the empty space where a small boy had once stood crying. Then he continued walking. Some stories don't have neat endings. Some wounds leave scars, but some fractures, with time and effort, can heal just enough. And in a family like this, just enough was sometimes everything. Outside, the London sky was overcast. Rain threatened. But inside the palace, children laughed. And that sound, more than anything else, was the truest measure of whether things would be okay. Reed climbed into his car and drove home to his own family, his own children, his own complicated, beautiful, messy life. Because at the end of the day, whether you lived in a palace or a townhouse, whether you wore a crown or a uniform, the challenges were the same: protecting the ones you loved, speaking truth when it mattered, and hoping that in the end, love would be enough. For Kate and Louis, it had been, and that was the real story. Not of royalty or scandal, but of a mother who refused to let anyone, no matter their title, dictate what was best for her child. That kind of love doesn't need a palace. It just needs courage. And Kate Middleton had proven she had plenty of that.